Good evening, and this is our 45th step in our walking tour through the Bible. And with this step, I intend to finish off the book of Numbers. I just want to look at chapter 31 because the rest of the book of Numbers is not particularly interesting. Chapter 31 is entitled in my Jerusalem Bible, The Holy War Against Midian. Now, the Israelites make war against the Midianites, and they do so in a way that can truly be described as a holy war. Because if you read chapter 31, just read the first 20 verses, and you'll see what I mean. Take a time to do that, just put me on pause. Okay, after those 21 verses, you'll notice this. 12,000 men go into the field against the Midianites, and Phinehas, son of the priest Eleazar, therefore Phinehas is also a priest, goes with them carrying the sacred objects and the trumpets for the battle cry. Now, this, in fact, does happen many a time in history where people have gone into battle carrying religious objects, religious banners and things like that, or adopted a religious war cry. The trumpet, incidentally, can be used in a secular way, but the trumpet was also a religious instrument calling people to prayer. And so the trumpet and the religious objects clearly mark this out as a God-endorsed war of destruction against the Midianites. Now, the Midianites, if you remember, their women had tempted the Israelites into the sin of apostasy. Therefore, the Midianites are to be wiped out. And so they made war on Midian, we're told in verse 7, as the Lord had ordered Moses, and put every male to death. So not just a war, but actually genocide as well. What is more, they killed the kings of Midian, and gives them the names, and even Balaam is put to death. The Israelites took the Midianite women and the little ones captive and carried off all their cattle, all their flocks, and all their goods as booty. Now, they set fire to the towns where they lived and to all their encampments. Then, taking all the booty and everything they captured, man beasts, they brought the captive spoil and booty to Moses. And Moses is very cross. Moses was enraged with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands, etc., who had come back from military expedition. He said, "Why have you spared the life of all the women?" They were the very ones who, on Balaam's advice, caused the Israelites to be unfaithful to Yahweh at the affair of Peor, hence the plagues which struck Yahweh's community. So kill all the male children and kill all the women who have ever slept with a man, but spare the lives of the young girls who have never slept with a man and keep them for yourselves. Well, this is really quite astonishing, isn't it? That there is essentially a God-given mandate for genocide and for the execution of prisoners. The execution of prisoners is something we consider very, very wrong indeed. You may remember in the Shakespeare play Henry V, Henry V gives the order to kill the prisoners at the Battle of Agincourt, which is a stain on his character, something he does under extreme pressure. But the murder, for that is what it is, of prisoners of war is nowadays considered, well, murder. And in those days, too, surely killing prisoners of war in this way was wrong. Though, of course, in those days, it was perfectly okay to enslave prisoners of war. All the slaves of the ancient world started off life, or their ancestors started off life, as prisoners of war. And you would be, if you were a prisoner of war, you would become a slave. But you also had a chance to redeem yourself or be redeemed. But this killing of prisoners seems incredibly wrong. This killing of women seems incredibly wrong. And this killing of children is incredibly wrong. Well, it's wrong, full stop. So we read about it in the Bible. What are we to make of that? Well, we're to make two things of this. First point is that this reflects the understanding that the Israelites had of their mission at the time when this was written. In other words, they thought that God authorized wars of destruction in this way, wars to the death, fire and the sword, and the killing of women and children. They really did think that God allowed this. Indeed, not just allowed it, but God approved of it, God ordered it. They were mistaken, gravely mistaken. And as we see as the Old Testament advances, they gradually overcome these delusions they have about God, and they see that God rather loves all people and wants all people to flourish. This is a very slow process, I have to say, and quite often texts obtrude in the later books, which clearly reflect the old vision, such as when, for example, Elijah kills the prophets of Baal, or when, for example, Saul fails to kill all the Amalekites. So that old idea keeps on coming up, but it's gradually replaced by a new idea where God is the God of universal love. And this reaches its height in one very short book, namely the book of Jonah, which actually, I'll make a bit of a claim here, is probably the most important book of the Old Testament, because it is, well, for a variety of reasons, and probably the most interesting book of the Old Testament, but also the shortest book of the Old Testament, more or less. The book of Jonah is about the God of universal love. And the God of the book of Jonah is profoundly different to the God who tells Moses to murder all the Midianites. Incidentally, Midianites, does that sound familiar? Well, yes, it does, because the Midianites ought to be put to death because the children of Israel have been cavorting with them. But who married a daughter of the priest of Midian? If you remember, Jethro, the priest of Midian, his daughter Zipporah, married Moses. And that's rather curious because she was seen as a rather good thing and Jethro was seen as a rather good thing. After all, when Moses was on fleeing from Egypt, it was Jethro who took him in. So Midianites clearly are not all bad in the Bible. In fact, what you have is conflicting accounts, conflicting traditions. One which says Midianites are bad, the other saying Midianites are great people. When Moses was then down on his luck, they helped him out. Okay, the other thing is that I'd like to tackle with this passage, and that's rather important, is this idea that has gained a lot of currency today in the world, saying that religion is the cause of all wars. Well, this was a religious war, this war against Midian, whenever it took place, thousands of years ago. Yes, it was a religious war. But no Christian is supporting religious war nowadays. Okay, that's really important. Just because Moses supported a religious war, or the book of Moses, the book of Numbers, seems to describe a religious war in glowing terms, is no justification for religious wars today. That seems an obvious point. But it's quite amazing how so many people who want to criticize Christians today use the example of Moses from 5,000 years ago. Yeah, sorry, but what Moses did cannot be attributed to us. The other thing is this. When people say, oh yes, religion has caused more wars than anything else, and everybody nods wisely, they're really making a very profound mistake. The First World War had nothing to do with religion. The Second World War had nothing to do with religion. And the war in the Congo, which killed more people than the First World War, had nothing to do with religion. If you look at the First World War, for example, you'll see that there was in the side of the Central Powers a Protestant nation, Germany, a Catholic nation, Austria, an Orthodox nation, Bulgaria, and a Muslim nation, Turkey, in alliance against French Catholics, although the French were profoundly secular, English Protestants, and Russian Orthodox. You can't really say that that was a religious war. The other thing, of course, was that in the First World War, at the behest of the Kaiser, the Sultan of Turkey did declare religious war, so-called jihad, against Britain and its empire, in the hope that the Indians would rise up against their British masters. He declared this and said every Muslim had the duty to make war on the British Empire, and nobody paid any attention at all. Every attempt to turn the First World War into a religious war met with profound failure. In fact, I can't really think of any religiously motivated wars apart from, of course, the Crusades. And they were rather a long time ago, weren't they? Okay, all the best for now. An interesting passage, that 31, about the religious war. Still very much a live topic. Well, goodbye to the Book of Numbers. All the best. See you soon.